We begin with the Trump White House getting skewered on the Epstein scandal. Today, a new filing from Trump's beleaguered DOJ that is already giving rise to suspicion and criticism. Plus, new legal action from a leading watchdog group and yet another warning from a Trump ally about the political peril of the current scandal. As New Republic reports today on Epstein, even MAGA world can smell that Trump is hiding something. In a new filing this afternoon, the Department of Justice pushing forward on requests to unseal grand jury material. But legal observers say it looks like theater and a barely concealed attempt to appear interested in transparency while pursuing information most experts believe won't contain any new revelations. New details today on Trump's desperate attempt to quell political blowback. The White House reportedly, quote, asking podcaster Joe Rogan to help ease the uproar over the Epstein files. Look, Rogan has been a vocal critic of the administration's handling of the Epstein files. The other problem for Trump concerns Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. Trump has dangled a pardon for her, which critics say looks like a blatant attempt to elicit friendly testimony from her. Today, Trump's former press secretary, Sean Spicer, warns all of this could backfire spectacularly.
What do you think the reaction would be if Donald Trump pardoned Maxwell?
I actually think about this differently. I would say he would be under the impression that he was going to be able to say that they got something from her, further information. I think if anyone who sells him on this is lying to him. My point, and that's why you're like, what is his reaction going to be? I think this is very akin to Comey, right? When he fired Comey, he was told, oh, if you fire Comey, everyone's going to cheer you on. And he missed I think people misled him on how that was going to go down. I think this is similar. There will be outrage like never before if she gets a deal.
Also, the government transparency group Democracy Forward filing a new lawsuit to force the administration to release the Epstein files. The head of the group saying, quote, President Trump has repeatedly said he would release the Epstein files. His spokesperson claims his administration is the most transparent in history, and yet they continue to hide from the American people. The only thing transparent about the Trump-Vance administration is how clearly they continue to disregard our nation's laws. Joining me now to discuss is Ambassador Norm Eisen, Executive Chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund, co-founder of the Contrarian, and former Obama ethics czar. His group is suing the administration for Epstein information. Also with us is Tara Setmeyer, co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project, author of Uncompromised on Substack, and former GOP communications director. So, Norm, I'll start with you. What are you hoping to get out of suing the DOJ and this administration for the Epstein files? Are you hoping to sort of highlight how non-transparent they are, highlight how they're obstructing justice, highlight how they are probably hiding something or somebody? Or do you actually think that they will release the information in any shape, where, form that we can actually understand or see as the public?
Jason, we filed the very first of what are now 11 FOIA requests against the administration. And there have been a series of steps since, with some proceeding in court. So far, what we've seen are litigation over demands for faster treatment. First out of the box, we expect that we will file the very first action demanding the file themselves. And why is that so important? Donald Trump appears in these files. They haven't produced the Trump Epstein information, and instead they've taken a convicted felon, serious sex offenses involving minors, Ghislaine Maxwell. She was interviewed by Donald Trump's personal former criminal counsel, Todd Blanche, and then she's moved to a minimum security facility. It stinks of a cover-up, Jason. And so what we're trying to get at is what happened, including Trump Epstein files, including Ghislaine Maxwell, and who was involved in the administration. The American people deserve to know. And frankly, victims are outraged about this movement of Maxwell. They need to know as well.
So, Tara, I'm going to go to the comms part about this first. So we have reports now that the White House is trying to beg Joe Rogan to go out and play defense for them on this particular issue. And I tend to be skeptical of that. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's ridiculous that the White House, with all of their apparatus and equipment, are going to a podcaster. But second, I don't think it's very likely that you're going to be able to convince any members of the MAGAsphere or the manosphere or anybody else who cares about this to change their mind. I mean, do you think that's likely? Do you think that the administration could put pressure on people who have staked their reputations on the importance of these files to somehow flip the script in order to make Trump and Vance happy?
Well, I think you've lost the plot when you have to go to Joe Rogan's podcast to explain the White House's position on the Epstein files and why they've given preferential treatment to a convicted child sex predator. They're in a bad way. And frankly, they violated every rule of crisis communications from day one about how to handle this situation. They've mishandled it for weeks, which is why we're still here. Right. The simple solution here is to release the damn files. If you have nothing to hide, you release the files. They were awfully gung-ho about this until they actually saw what was in the files, I'm assuming, very early on in the administration. They campaigned, many of them campaigned on it. Many in the podcaster, right-wing podcaster, grifter world made their millions and fortunes on pushing conspiracy theories around this and other things. Some of them got cushy positions in the administration, like the FBI director and deputy FBI director. So this is a huge problem for them in a number of areas, and they can't expect expect people who have been focused on this for years to all of a sudden just believe the BS that they're feeding them. That's the problem. And Joe Rogan, I mean, to his credit, was skeptical of this and why they've mishandled this and said, like, this isn't making sense. What's the problem here? I don't think sending Donald Trump's former personal attorney, now DOJ official, who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell and gave her some, sweetheart immunity and moved her to a cushy club fed, is going to convince the Joe Rogans of the world that now all of a sudden everything's kosher. This is a failed strategy because they're full of crap. They're BSing people, and the MAGAs are understanding that. And you have now the victims and the survivors who are coming out speaking more about their stories, which is another PR nightmare for the White House, because now they have agency and they're telling their horrific stories of what they went through. And it doesn't look good for the White House when they still are concealing the files. For what?
Norm, so since you're, again, in the process of trying to sort of get these files public, this is the question that I have. This is a regular man or woman on the street question. So the files come out, and we get a chance to read them. Even if the files detail terrible behavior on the part of anybody in the administration, whether it's the president or anybody else connected one way or another, what happens next? I mean, because I think the concern that a lot of people have, and the reason that you might get some shoulder shrugs from people who aren't heavily invested, is even if this information comes forward, unless there is the immediate threat of prosecution for what we find out in these Epstein files, it seems like a tempest in a teapot. So what do you say to people who have that concern? Even if this comes out, if nobody's held accountable, what difference does it make?
Well, it depends on what we see in those files. For example, if there is evidence, we demanded all the information about the decision to transfer Ghislaine Maxwell. If there's evidence that the administration is engaging in a cover-up at the expense of these victims, my goodness, that is explosive information. So there's much more to it. The country, frankly, has a right to know about Trump and Epstein as well, and all of the other details, Jason.
Tara, I want to play you some sound from a town hall in Nebraska. Representative Flood faces serious boos over Epstein. I want to get your response on the other side.
Why are you covering up the Epstein files?
So, Tara, my question is simply this. If people are this upset, that's fine. It is August of 2025. Do you think this actually has any impact by next year? Because that's the other thing. As angry as some Republican and MAGA voters say they are, if their votes don't change next year, does this matter?
Well, I think that's the question here, is how long can the outrage on this go for? And I think the White House is counting on running out the clock on this. However, if the strategy to keep this, well, first of all, if they keep making mistakes like this, the White House, in prolonging the story, it's just going to elongate this. I mean, what Norm is doing and what his organization is doing, there will be others. The survivors are coming out now and starting to kind of go back to what are their options? Are they going to sue for things? They keep telling their story. So it could extend the life of this for several months. And I think also what it does is it gives Democrats an opportunity. And even my organization, the Seneca Project, we're a content organization. So we put out ads and we put out content to inform people of what's going on, to hold Trump accountable, and to explain to people what's at stake. And this is just another part of the pattern of how Donald Trump is a liar. He's betraying people, including his own people. And we have an ad out now called Cheater that's going to play right in Bedminster this weekend, talking about how Donald Trump has cheated in every aspect of his life, including cheating the American people on this and on the bill, on the budget bill, et cetera. So there's ways to weave this in to the overarching theme of what Donald Trump's presidency has represented, how it hurts the American people. And Democrats have an opportunity going into the midterms to consistently talk about that. And then that can depress the MAGA vote. Even Steve Bannon said, if 1-2% of the MAGAs, even 5, stay home, they're in big trouble for the midterms, which is why Donald Trump and the MAGAs are trying to cheat the American people and voters by changing the districts in places like Texas and others. They know they're in trouble with this.